A warm welcome on this December morning. Welcome to the launch of the Nordic Monitoring of Diet, Physical Activity and Overweight 2025, in short called NORMO 2025. Welcome to all of you who are with us in this very special location, and of course also a huge welcome to each and every one of you who are following us from behind your screens from all over the Nordic region. Now, it was 6:30 this morning that the NORMO report 2025 was released, so it is really brand new. And for the next hour and 20 minutes, we're going to hear the highlights from the NORMO 2025 and going to discuss some of the issues that it raises concerns about. My name is Line Friis Frederiksen, I'm a science journalist, and I'm going to moderate the next hour and 20 minutes. And first of all, it's a pleasure and honor for me to introduce the General Secretary of the Nordic Council of Ministers, Karen Ellemann, who will now give the opening address.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, it is my pleasure as the Secretary General of the Nordic Council of Ministers to be here and to wish you all a very warm welcome to the launch of NORMO 2025. The change towards a healthier and more sustainable Nordic region starts, of course, with our food. And the Nordic countries have actually for a long time been front runners for both a healthy and also a sustainable eating. And this is really an important agenda because unhealthy diets come at a significant cost, not only for the individual, but of course also for our societies as a whole. Because an unhealthy diet is one of the major risk factors for a range of the most common chronic diseases, putting, of course, a heavy burden on our public health systems. And today, honestly, I'm always positive and see the possibilities in everything, but honestly today, I think it's fair to say that I bring bad news. But we must also see these bad news as a foundation for change, because it is my hope for today that this report and this session will be your call for action, for stronger efforts, and for Nordic collaboration. So let me put it bluntly. We are on a path towards becoming a sedentary and overweight Nordic population, characterized by spending excessive time behind our screens while eating unhealthy and unsustainable food. 56%, I mean, that's over half of the Nordic adults are living with overweight or obesity. And 1 out of 5 children do so. So 56% and 1 out of 5. We consume less fruits, less vegetables and whole grains compared to 10 years ago, back in 2014. We have also increased our consumption of sugary foods and drinks, and the consumption of energy drinks has doubled in the last decade, doubled. The Nordic governments, luckily, have set clear objectives for our health and food cooperation, and they want to contribute to improve public health in our Nordic region. They emphasize that we should increase our work to prevent unhealthy lifestyles. And we are hosting several arenas and initiatives to change behaviors for diets, for smoking, for alcohol, and also for physical activity. So not least, also through the work of our institution, the Nordic Welfare Center. Back in 2023, just 2 years ago, we took a bold step with the launch of the new edition of the Nordic Nutrition Recommendations. And it is the globally leading report of its kind. And for the first time in its 40-year history, it does not only guide us towards healthy eating, but also environmentally sustainable consumption. And these are not only recommendations. Every day, the Nordic nutrition recommendations are actually turned into healthy and sustainable school meals, dinners that are served in our hospitals, canteen lunches, and is also evidence-based guidance for all our citizens. So this actually has a clear and a direct effect. But as we can see from the results of this new report, stronger efforts are still needed. So to address the surge in energy drink consumption, we are actually now in 2026 starting an initiative to bend the curve among young people. We want to work together with the teenagers to understand their consumption of energy drinks and also how to tackle the barriers to actually lower their intake. So we need new tools to stop this worrying development. So it is really my hope that this Nordic cooperation can help the new generation to become more healthy. It's definitely needed. As seen in NORMO 2025, we do not meet the recommended intake of aquatic food in our current diets. And by next summer, we will therefore launch initial recommendations on how to increase also the consumption of aquatic food in the Nordics. One would say, how we are situated, it should be an easy one, right? We have them all around us. So let's deliver that change. And also here, finally, let me just conclude by expressing my gratitude to all the researchers and experts that have actually developed this report. It is an important piece of work that really can help us guide Nordic decision makers. So, as I said in the beginning, today is indeed a call for action, and let us remember that when we leave this launch today, when you leave the screens and take on your jobs, we really need to act and we need to cooperate. So, with those words, let's all get to work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Karen Ellemann. And now I have the pleasure of introducing the project leader of the NORMO 2025 study. That's Senior Advisor at the National Food Institute at Denmark's Technical University, Sisse Fact. And she will now, for the next 7 minutes, present us to the key messages from this huge survey across the Nordic countries. So please give Sisse a hand.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, how do you boil down 5 years of work to 7 minutes? It's difficult, but let's go. The main conclusions is already lifted a little bit upon by Karen, but it doesn't look good. We have an increase in overweight and obesity in the Nordics. We can see a decline in adults and children's intake of fruits and of whole grain bread. We can see an increase in adults and children's intake of soft drinks, candy, and chocolate, and also an intake of energy drinks among adults. It has actually been doubled over the years. And we can establish that, well, the Nordics, they have a high consumption of meat. 6 times a week we consume meat. And then the nicotine use has been remained relatively stable, but has shifted from from smoking to smokeless use of nicotine. Just a little bit about the participants. It's a survey with 5 Nordic countries: Norway, Finland, Denmark, Iceland, and Sweden. And we have questions on diet, physical activity, and overweight. It's self-reported overweight, or height and weight. And then the use of alcohol and nicotine. We have 5,000 participants in the age of 18 to 65 years of age, among, well, approximately 1,000 adults in each country. And then we have 2,500 children aged 7 to 12 years approximately 500 children in each country. We have collected the data with almost the same dietary or the questionnaire in the 3 surveys we now have conducted from 2011 to 2014, and then the latest one in 2024, but where we have made a possibility for the participants also to report their data in a web-based questionnaire. What we see with the overweight and obesity, we can see that 56% of the adults are living with overweight or obesity in the Nordic region, and we can see that it has increased in the region from 2014 to 2024. And we can see that social inequality is high. 66% of those living with overweight or obesity are among the short educated, while it's 48% of those with long education. And for children, it's 1 in 5 children that are overweight or living with overweight and obesity in the region. And we can see that the prevalence of obesity and overweight has increased during the decade. Just to get a brief overlook of the diet among adults, you can see that, well, intake of fruits and vegetables has decreased. Whole grain bread has decreased as well. Meat is high. Chocolate and candy has fruits and vegetables has decreased. Whole grain has decreased, and chocolate and candy has increased. And then sugary and light beverages, soft drinks has increased. And then energy drink as well. It has actually been doubled. Then for screen time in adults, we can see that we have a high amount of participants having high screen time, over 4 years a day, 4 hours a day. And we can see that, well, we are quite sedentary in that matter. And then the last slide, we can see the smoking, where I mentioned that we have shifted from smoking cigarettes to using nicotine pouches and snuff, and where we can see that actually the combination of daily smoking and smokeless nicotine use is about 20%. Denmark and Finland a little bit lower, but I doubt that the consumption of or the use of nicotine will not be increased in Denmark. We have really bad habits in many ways, so we'll probably, with the next survey, see that we kind of raise our numbers. So with this quite depressing results, I'll say, well, we really need to take some action because it's highly needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sisse. I'm allowed to ask you a few questions. I thought you were leaving me.
Sorry.
But Sisse, Karen said that we need action. You just pointed it out, but what raises the biggest concern from your perspective?
Well, I'm amazed that actually the sugar consumption has increased. And I think that in all this speak about green transition and eating more plants and so on, we've kind of forgotten the messages about that we should not eat much sugar. And we should actually remember that sugary candy and chocolate and so on, it's not sustainable. So we can actually make the message that for eating sustainable, you should not eat too much sugar as well.
No, so both for the health and for the sustainability.
Yeah.
And is there any ideas? What can we do to take action on the sweets now we've sort of forgotten that?
Well, it's both about raising awareness, but it's also about structural initiatives and where we have been talking about taxes. And I know that the sugar or the chocolate tax has been, well, it's not there anymore in Denmark. It's really uphill. But still there are some initiatives to take some political actions and make some regulations for this. So it's just to go to work and let it be done.
Thank you so much, Sis. I know there's a lot of work to be done still, and I know that you will be busy these days presenting the results, but thank you for joining us today, and let's just give Sis one more last hand. Thank you, Sis.
Thank you.
And now we'll hand into the first panel discussion of today, because how do we follow up on NORMO 2025? What actions are needed, besides from what Sisa just said? The panel debate is called Mobilizing Nordic Action, All Hands on Deck. And the panel is consisting of Sebastian Helm, who is Director of Food Safety. That's part of the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry in Finland. And as a director, Sebastian is also responsible for overseeing food safety in Finland and for advising on regulation and legislation in the field. And we have Tone Poulsen, Torgersen, who's head of section of the NGO, the Norwegian National Health Association. That's an interdisciplinary organization working to promote public health research, education, dissemination, and policy development in Norway. And finally, Judith Kust, director of Madkulturen, which is an independent knowledge and change organization under the Ministry of Food, Agriculture and Fisheries here in Denmark. Please give the panel a hand. So thank you for being with us today. And Sebastian, let's start with you. Why do you see that we need to work on this at a Nordic level?
Well, for several reasons. Apart from it being really fun to compare your results to your neighboring countries, which is always sort of good. You can always find something which is good about your country, so you can bring a positive message home to your politicians and say that, look, we're not that bad, we're eating fruits. But seriously, I think that we are rather small countries and we tend to look at each other very much. So if we're very bad at going ahead one at a time, we strive to sort of make big changes together. And we see that very often in nutrition. I'm really glad that Norway has actually taken a stand on the energy drinks, and they actually have legislated on not selling energy drinks for kids. But that's very rare. Normally, we don't go alone like that. We tried to introduce Nutri-Score to Finland, and we were this close to having Nutri-Score. I'm sure you're all familiar with Nutri-Score, and we would have replaced the heart symbol. But in the end, our politicians said that we don't want to go there. If Sweden are still using nyckelhålet, we will also use the heart symbol. So I think that only shows that if we could come together under the Nordic Council of Ministers to come up with with common ideas and making sure that there's nothing illegal in going in any direction, then we can really move forward.
Thank you, Sebastian. And Tone, now, as Sebastian mentioned, in Norway you have made this ban on selling energy drinks to young and children under 16. But I know that you've also made a ban on advertising unhealthy food towards children. And I know that the Norwegian National Health Association that you are director for has played a big part in that. So how have you made these bans come through, and what are the key learnings from it?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us to this launch of the report. And I have to say, first of all, that it has been a lot of stakeholders involved in this. I will just talk a little bit about the ban of marketing of unhealthy food and drinks towards children. It has a long history. We did 13 years ago, brave politicians in Norway tried to enforce legislation. They didn't make it come through completely, so we ended up with a self-regulation mechanism by the industry. But since then, society has changed. First of all, the mechanism, the self-regulation was not sufficient, and also society has changed in a way that the industry has a direct hotline into the pockets of children through their phones. So I think that's also changed the opinion in the population. But from our perspective, there are a few learnings. I'll quickly run through 5 short learnings. And I think it's really important to not be sloppy about the evidence. In the public health family, we get kind of eager, but we need to keep it strict to what is evidence in the field to keep it on the agenda over a long time. Also, partnerships is crucial. We have, probably in the other Nordic countries as well, an NCD alliance between us, the Norwegian National Health Association, Cancer Society, Society for Diabetes, Heart and Lung Disease, and also mental health. We also collaborate with the medical and nurse associations, and last but not least, youth organization. So Save the Children youth organization and also UNICEF. It's really important to have them on board, so it's not we adults talking on behalf of the children. Second, I think it's important we have a long-term advocacy and collaboration with health authorities. The Directorate of Health in Norway is quite good at collaborating with NGOs. Furthermore, we work across all political parties. Although different political parties have different solutions to the problem, they seem to have consensus on that we should give all children the equal rights for health and well-being through their life course. So we have to show ourselves to all the political parties. And finally, I talked a little bit about the opinion in the population. We have measured the opinion in the population over time with our collaborators, and we can show that the vast majority of the population are actually welcoming these kind of measures. So I think that's some of the key learnings.
So it made it easier for the politicians to be brave when they could tell that the public had the same opinion.
Of course, they knew that they had support. Very often you don't have the strong voices for killings that not happened yet, you know? That's the nature of prevention. So we need to have some health organization and other big partnerships to show that we also have a voice for the diseases we want to prevent.
Thank you so much. And then Judith, as director for Madkulturen, where you're trying to change food culture and you're also leading the work with the program New Nordic Food, how do you then think that movements like New Nordic Food can actually help change our habits, which we can tell is really needed?
Well, I think first of all, I think this goes to show, this new report goes to show that in many, many ways we have the same challenges across the Nordics, that's for sure. And what the Nordic Food Program showed, starting 20 years ago, was really that what we can do together in the Nordics is to change, at this stage, yes, it was in the gastronomy sector, but we could find a common platform of values, really and bring about change on that basis.
I think we'll just have a change in sound because
He's
there's
not
just
happy
one
with my
second
sound.
in between that it is off. And I think especially for the people behind the screens, we really need to be sure that everything comes through. So we'll just have a 3 seconds break. Try again.
Is that better?
Maybe, I think he'll just have to turn it on. No accidents, please. Yeah. All right, I think we're back on. So
Yeah, is that better?
yeah.
Cool. Wow. Sound. Well, what the New Nordic Manifest did and the New Nordic Food Movement did was manifesting 10 common values, 10 points of departure in terms of looking at the richness of our natural resources, looking at approaching a common Nordic diet, healthy on the basis of what we stand on in the Nordics. And what's interesting there is not the food itself, it is, but it goes to show if you take a trip around the Nordics, it's very, very different if you look at the traditional food. So there's a long way from seal in Greenland and surströmming in Sweden and cabbage sauerkraut in Denmark, but the values were the same. You found a platform for common value, and what they did when they put all the resources behind a.
Yes, I think we need to be sure that the sound is all right because this is going to be on YouTube. So I'm sorry, Judith, but I'm glad that you were able to handle it.
No worries.
And I think we just
Thank you much. Some new sound for me.
to get it turned on again. Yes.
Super. Really what I think is the point here is that when strong forces put their efforts behind a manifest, and in this case, a lot of chefs, so where we saw the results obviously were very much in the gastronomic sector, but we went from 20 years ago having absolutely no Michelin stars in the Nordics to having 88 Nordic Michelin stars now. And we went from, and we won the Bocuse d'Or and what have you. And what we're looking into now, the Nordic ministers have just decided on a new program that is going to, in the coming years, going to look at how can we transform this movement? How can we take all the learning from the gastronomic sector and how we work together on this common value? And we believe we can do it again. So we're looking into how can we transform these learnings into a common movement for healthy everyday food in the Nordic sector.
Thank you, and I think it's a really important point to make, that we need to focus on the shared values, that we need to make more food from the very start, etc., instead of pointing at someone eating seal and someone eating too much meatballs or whatever it could be. So I think that's a really good starting point, because we are, of course, also different across the Nordic countries when it comes to food.
But at the same time, when you actually read the NORMO results, I think it's striking how similar we all are. It's like, I mean, there's differences and we can be happy or sad about them, but on the whole, we still have a fairly uniform dietary culture and also a culture of how we move and how we watch screens and everything. So we're not that different.
And of course that's important, but it's just like minor details that Iceland actually eat enough aquatic foods, etc., etc. So there will be minor details. But Sebastian, I would actually like to continue with you, because you mentioned that you have the heart symbol in Finland, and the rest of the Nordic countries have the keyhole label. And now you talk about Nutri-Score, which is this many European countries have it. It is not, as far as I know, as valid as we would like. But why do you think it's good to aim for a European label instead of just concentrating on the Nordic and make one shared label for all of us?
Well, I think we're members in the European Union, most of us, many of us. So I think that any time that we can go for a harmonized European approach, which will also, of course, be the approach of Norway and Iceland in the long time, I think we should also always strive for that. And I think if we work together as Nordic countries, we have a much bigger voice in actually saying what kind of European approaches we want. I'm not saying that Nutri-Score is perfect. I think the only good thing with Nutri-Score is that you have this warning element, in that you have a red or an orange sign, a D or an E, saying that you should not eat this food, which we lack in both nyckelhålet and the heart symbol. But I think in essence, the heart symbol and nyckelhålet are better tailored for our dietary challenges. But I think that we should strive to make some sort of deal by which we promise that we all the Nordic countries would go into the Nutri-Score system, and I'm sure that the Central European 8 countries would be really happy to have us there, because they're really looking for it to expand. Since it's not going to expand through the EU legislation now, they really need to sort of make it expand on a voluntary basis. But I think if we would go there together and we would say that, look, we have these concerns that, you don't pay enough attention to whole grain, you don't pay enough attention to the healthy oils and so forth. We know exactly what the problems are. If we could somehow do something about them in the Nutri-Score algorithm, then I think it would be a much better system and something. We really need warning signs on our foods. As we have heard today, we eat candies, we eat energy drinks, we drink soft drinks. I mean, the diet is not healthy, and clearly nyckelhålet is not enough to deter people, or it's not enough to keep them on the nyckelhålet food.
Thank you. And Tone, besides what you just mentioned before about evidence and creating partnerships, etc., what does it take, or what role does civil society take in getting closer to the goal?
Well, besides, of course, advocacy, building trust and the partnerships, I think it's complicated but very important to broaden out the understanding of the nature of this problem we are facing. Because, of course, each and one of us have responsibility for our own health. But when we see on such a large scale change on a population level, that rapid changes, it's not about genes. It's not about a collective lack of self-control all of a sudden. It's about societal change. It's about our food environments. And if we want to do something about it, we really need to target society and food environments to change those environments. I also would say that it's kind of promising to know also that very many of the public health measures, they imply very small changes for each individual. Like the ban on marketing I just told about, it's a very small change for one child. But across the whole population, it's a really big impact on the population level. But these are kind of, it's the prevention paradox, so to speak, and it's complicated to communicate, but the understanding of it is growing, I think.
So rather small changes for the whole group instead of huge changes for a small group.
Yeah, naturally, intuitively, we want to run after those at high risk. But most of the diseases come from people at middle risk because there are so much more people at middle risk. So that's why we need the broad policies and not only run after those people at high risk. That's also very often poorer than most of the rest.
And
Yeah.
if I may add, I fully agree that we need to go for the whole population, small changes in the whole population. I think we haven't talked about health-related taxes on foods, but I think that's another area where we could really work together as Nordic countries, because that's another area where we're really afraid to go forward unless we do it together. And also, if we have health taxes on foods, like you had the sukkergas cut in Denmark, you always run the problem of people going to the neighboring countries to buy food which is not taxed. So at least if we could have a uniform tax system in the Nordic countries, then at least that would prevent us from running over Nordic borders. Then, of course, Denmark has Germany and we have Estonia, but it's been shown that actually the effect of cross-border buying of food is actually rather small. Although, I mean, the politicians point at it and the sugar companies certainly point at it, but I think on a population scale, again, we still shop in the shop which is closest to us.
Yeah, you don't drive from Copenhagen to the border of Germany to buy a candy that's a little bit cheaper now. Judith, and after Judith, I would like to ask whether there are any questions from the audience, and there'll be a microphone for you, so just prepare. But Judith, you want to make changes with new Nordic food program, but what would it take for your effort to get an impact, get a real impact, so the next time we see the NORMO survey, then we've actually moved in the right direction?
Well, first of all, it really takes true effort to get a movement. I mean, what we hear a lot, I totally agree. There's some structural changes that need to take place. There's some political decisions. There's taxations, all kinds of things. But on the other side of that, there's a culture that's changing. There's food skills, certainly, especially amongst the next generation, that we're losing. So on the one hand, you have all the structural change, all you can do to try and fence in some solutions, but you also need to work with your food culture. And we share a lot here in the Nordics. And the new program, which hasn't entirely been decided yet, there's a framework for it. There's a new steering committee that's going to take a decision on it. But some of the corner flags are looking into how we can make intercultural food exchange amongst food cultural institutions in the Nordics. That's sort of one corner flag. And the other one is looking at our next generation. They're the ones who are really going to get into trouble if we're not stemming the tide. And so, I dare say, school food, we're behind in Denmark, but we're catching up. So we're also looking into the school structures and how we can make inter-school exchange, and looking how we can work together with the next generation and their food habits. So I think there's a lot we can do, and I do think, and you're so right, there's so many similarities. And having worked with this for the last couple of years now, I'm so motivated and so encouraged by the fact that there's an awful lot we can share, and there's an awful lot we can do together in the Nordics if we build on these corner flags.
Thank you. And
yeah, can I just add, because I totally agree with you, and I think we really need to recognize that when we face these kind of wicked issues, they're so complex. Very often you want that list. Give me that list of the most efficient measures, and you want a single list of them. Sad to say, that list doesn't exist. You have to have a lot of measures all together, and that's the only way forward.
Very important comment. So let's see whether there are any questions from the audience. We have one over here. Do we have a microphone? Yeah, there's a microphone here. So over here. And just get the microphone close to your mouth.
Hello and good morning. Yes, Mads Fischer-Møller from the Danish Ministry of Food and Agriculture. Denmark is taking over the chairmanship of the Nordic Council of Ministers next year. I'm sort of probably in charge of preparing some of the agenda. So especially for our non-Danish panelists, what would you want the Nordic Ministers of Food and Agriculture to discuss next year? What would be a good topic to move this forward? Yeah, just that.
Now you get your chance.
Great.
To set the
I think
agenda.
I said 2 already. It's the improve the food labeling and also consider the health-related taxes. I think that actually value-added tax is something that we should be fairly easy to work with, but at least our finance department is really not in the mood of discussing that. So we really need pressure from the politicians. I think what you're doing on energy drinks, and I know that work is already started, I think that's exactly the kind of research we need in order to make legislation in all the Nordic countries. I mean, energy drinks is a small problem. In Iceland, it's quite a big problem. And I think that's at least one thing that we could really work, do active things on.
Thank you, Sebastian. Tone?
Yeah, recognizing that they need to discuss a lot. I think there are large opportunities on discussing the healthy taxing. And not only taxing, but it should be balanced without any fiscal instruments, without increasing the state's income. So you can make healthy choices cheaper and unhealthy choices more expensive. In Norway, our NGO, we work together with environmental NGOs on this issue because in the environmental policy, they already use these taxations. So we need to bring all the economics into this field, and I think if we could on a Nordic level elaborate on how this could be put into place, I think it would really strengthen the health in our countries collectively.
And Judy, do you also want to?
Yeah,
give a
really.
comment?
If you take that to a meta level, I think really, as you said, there's no magic wand, there's no checklists. What can we do? And I do think that from what you're saying, if we take that into a higher perspective, I think we really need to look into before that meeting to look into the toolbox we have in the Nordic. I think there's a lot of hidden different tools in the different Nordics that we're not sharing. Best practices, that's what I want to say. So I think it's sometimes you hear, oh, goodness, they've banned energy drinks in Norway. I heard it by chance. We have different taxation systems. I do think that on a structural level, when we got the ministers there, we are not successful enough in sharing best practice. I think if we put together a toolbox of best practice on which they can base their discussions, I think we could move forward faster.
So actually quite simple tools that some of the countries would already use that we just need to share. Yeah.
And I think Karen will probably come in and say that actually we have a Nordic toolbox already, but it's been met with some critique because I think we proposed to have a meat tax and that didn't go down well with the politicians. I think with taxation, it's really, the lesson that I've learned, and I think you learned it in Denmark as well, is that you can't go after the one big polluter, like say candy. You have to sort of, you should base the taxation on some sort of nutrition profile. We should be neutral, just saying that, if a food fulfills a certain health potential, then you tax it less. And if it's rich in salt, sugar, energy, then you tax it more. But you shouldn't say that, okay, all chocolate now has a 20% tax, because that will make the chocolate companies really angry. And for all I care, they can be angry, but it's very easy also for them then to say that this is unfair or whatever. So you should try to make it as neutral as possible. That's my advice. And we've talked about diet a lot, but I think we should probably also, and I'm sure that there's experts here in the room who think that we should probably talk about the other stuff in NORMO as well. I think sort of getting people to move is also a big thing. Actually, one of the few good things that our present government has done was that they banned mobile phones in school, which has actually led to kids from age 6 to 18 actually going out and doing something, if nothing else, at least walking about the yard instead of just staring at their phones inside. So small things like these, and actually that was seen as a very difficult decision, but once it was enacted, the kids loved it, the parents obviously like it, the teachers like it. It's like everybody's going like, why didn't we do this earlier? Because it was a big discussion for 5 years. What shall we do with the kids? They're just looking at their phones in the classroom. Now there's no phones anymore. Everybody's happy.
So again, where we can learn from, one brave country on that aspect. Is there another question from the audience? Yeah, we have 2 questions. Yeah, you have a microphone already.
I was told to move forward. Hi, I'm Anna Johnson from the city of Copenhagen. Thank you very much for good insights already. I'm a bit curious because you talk a lot about these big structural changes and, of course, school food, which we talk a lot about and we serve a lot of meals in the city of Copenhagen. I'm curious about, we've known for a while that we need to eat more green, so that's like a common knowledge, I would say. And we need to, reduce our meat consumption and so on. Looking at the numbers, that hasn't happened. So I'm wondering if you think that awareness raising has an impact, or if you need to, like campaigning and like sharing this facts that we know, or do you think that you need to work with these like big structural taxes and so on?
So is awareness enough, or do we need structural changes? I think you already touched a little bit upon it, Judith.
Well, you need both. Yeah, you need all of it. And I think we talked a lot about structural changes today and some about the cultural. But in terms of awareness, there's no doubt, there's absolutely no doubt we need it. But I do think we need to approach it in another way. I do think that in the environment that we have, we need to find another way of nudging changes through awareness building. That there's somehow, now you talked about meat, there's somehow, it's becoming a conflict. And if it becomes a conflict, it's very, very difficult to go about change. So I think we need to go about making healthier diets, healthier living attractive in other ways. We need to really shake that back and look at other ways of going about it. But you can't move forward without awareness. You can't do it just with structural changes. In the way you said it a lot, how the food environment are changing. You need the inner drive and the awareness as well. So you can't go one without the other. But we do need to find new approaches.
I think you're both nodding, so we'll just jump to the next question from the audience. Please, can you hold it a little closer to?
May I suggest that you make a common action on marketing to children for unhealthy food? We know that this marketing has a very, very negative effect on children's consumption of unhealthy food. And by joining Nordic forces, we could put a pressure on EU to make some EU regulation. But we have to start at home, so may I suggest a common Nordic action?
Common Nordic action on banning advertising for kids?
It's music in my ears.
Yeah. We're happy to follow Norway on this. And of course, I mean, we have had self-regulation as well in Finland for 20 years. And like you said, in Norway, it doesn't really work. Industry just gives as much as they need to give and never more. So we need stronger legislation there. We've worked on that in Finland, and I think it's coming. And especially with Norway as an example, I'm sure that we'll get there pretty soon.
And it also comes back to what you talked about with Nutri-Score, that in the Nordic region we can actually affect the EU level if we stand together strong.
Yeah, but it's not always easy, but I think that we should have as a starting point always working on a Nordic level, because we really share challenges and strengths.
We have just like 4 minutes back, and we need to touch upon inequalities, because we haven't touched upon that yet, and that's such a big, as we could also tell from what Sisse told us, that's such a big issue in the NORMO 2025. So what do we do about the inequality when it comes to health? I don't know, Tone, if you would like to start.
I just want us to remember one major point. We need to also think about the root causes of health inequalities. If we allow increasing social inequalities and gaps between rich and poor, that is the same as accepting inequalities in health. The main premise for inequalities in health is unfair distribution of wealth. A fair distribution of wealth will also give a fair distribution of health. So I think I just wanted to say that because it has to be on the table when we talk about all the specific measures.
No. Completely agree. Inequalities it's not huge, but it's growing in the Nordic countries, and I couldn't agree more. It's not really. It's not that that they want to have worse habits, the ones who are poor. It's just that's where they find themselves. They don't have the time, they don't have the interest, they don't have the means. It's really difficult. And then you have 1/4 of the population who is perfectly healthy and doing really well.
Judith, what do we do?
Well, I think actually, I think this is where I'm most pessimistic in a Nordic perspective, because I do think the root causes of inequality will need to be tackled even more nationally. There are very many different reasons for this. In Denmark, we're actually starting to see a real food poverty, and tackling such dire problems as that. I think we need to start with the broader population, Nordically, all the solution we took to today. I think some of the issues of inequality needs really strong governments tackling them at a national level, because the root causes are so different, and it's such difficult problems to tackle. So I think that's next level. And there's a lot of other things we need to start off on the Nordic corporations first.
And we hope that's on the agenda at the next year's meetings among the Nordic ministries as well.
Sebastian?
If I can just say one thing more, I think it's really interesting to look at the actual NORMO results and compare the results, because at least I had a lot of prejudged ideas about, Norwegians moving a lot and Danish people cycling like crazy. And it turns out that all of my presumptions were really wrong. I mean, they didn't hold up. And that also goes for inequality. Sometimes when you look at the inequality results, you can see that for some particular parameters, people who are poor or with low education are actually doing just as well as the others. But you really have to go into the numbers and find them, so that you don't go around saying stupid things.
Judith, you made...
Yeah, and I think exactly what we've also been presented today is being able to compare, being able to look into the evidence will be an aid for all of us. But I do think, and that's a final note, that one thing we can do about inequality together, before getting too dark on that question, is really what I was touching upon earlier when we're looking at the next generation. And I'm sorry to take it out again, but we can all strengthen school food and our intake change on that in the Nordic. There's a lot more we can do. And that is at least a place where we can tackle inequality for the next generation. For that reason, it's ever so important. And I do think there's a lot of cooperation that we could do amongst the Nordics on that page.
And then we're back to the evidence that you also talked about in the beginning, Tone. It's so important. That's why the NORMO reports are so important. And that's why it's important that we have this launch today. But I would like to thank all of you from the panel for sharing your ideas and views on this. And please give our panel a hand. Thank you. And we will now narrow in a little bit and take a more specific look on energy drinks and unhealthy eating, which we have, of course, already touched upon. But as Karen mentioned in the beginning, energy drink has doubled. The consumption of energy drink has doubled within the last decade. And also we're eating more unhealthy food. So why is that such a big problem, especially with the energy drinks, and what do we do about it? To discuss this, we have Claus Krogh, who is head of corporate affairs in Lidl, who's one of the biggest supermarket retailers in Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. Then we have Sabina Lieten Carlsen, who is a toxicologist and nutritionist at Swedish Food Agency, and that's part of Healthy, Safe, and Sustainable Diet Initiative in the Nordic region. And then we have Maja Effersø, who is a consumer policy advisor for food and sustainable consumption at the Danish consumer organization Tink. Please welcome the panel. So Sabina, I would like to start with you. As a nutritionist and toxicologist, what are the consequences health-wise when young people and adolescents have high consumptions of energy drinks?
Yeah, I would like to mention 4 reasons for why this is especially bad for adolescents and children. First, children are more sensitive to high levels of caffeine, and it's easy for them to get effects that are unwanted, like racing heart, tremors, nausea, anxiety, and so on. And secondly, caffeine disturbs their sleep, and children has a larger need of sleep for their well-being. And third, when drinking energy drinks on a regular basis, sipping them once in a while, it will increase the risk of dental corrosion that are an irreversible effect. And last but not least, it's easy to get addicted to caffeine. And we do not want a young generation addicted to high levels of caffeine to be able to handle everyday life.
And I guess also in many of the energy drinks, you also have a lot of sugar, right?
Yeah, they can contain sugar or sweeteners. Yeah.
You mentioned children and adolescents, but how, I guess many of the things is also an issue for adults, even though it's not as huge a problem.
Yeah, it is, but they are not as sensitive. But they can, of course, also have these unwanted effects, like disturbed sleep and so on.
Yeah. Klaus, Lidl has, as the only big supermarket chain here in Denmark, actually decided not to sell energy drinks to young people under the age of 16. And also, you've decided not to sell cigarettes from the new stores you're building. So what responsibility, you've taken action already, but what responsibility do you think that big supermarket chains should have or should take to ensure that people buy more healthy and more sustainable foods?
I think we have a super important role in this. The reason why we took energy drink out for kids under 16, Sabine has just explained very well why. And Norway, and there's a lot of European countries that has legislation around this. But in terms of your question, I think supermarkets have a pivotal role in making it possible for our customers to buy more healthy. We're not the judges, but we should encourage them to buy more healthy, buy more fruit and veg. And we can also, in our assortment, we can change the ingredients. So we can, for instance, have more whole grains in our bread assortment. And Lidl, we have a whole grain target that 20% of all our assortment should have a higher level of whole grain. So yes, we do have a pivotal role. And I think that it's not only just about helping the society as such. It's also a climate discussion. It's also due to climate we need to change the assortment on our shelves so it's more climate friendly.
Why don't you think that your colleagues from the other supermarket chains have followed in your steps and also decided, to ban the selling or the sale of energy drinks?
I don't know why they haven't, but I guess they have other agendas. But if we look at Danish retailers, Danish supermarkets, we are actually, all of us, trying to promote more healthy food. You will argue, if you look at our leaflets, our tilbudsaviser, that we are also promoting unhealthy food. And we do have candy, bland selvslik right next to the cashier. So yes, we do have unhealthy things, but we also have a lot of good stuff on the shelf.
Yeah,
so you can buy healthier if you want to.
Because that was just what I was thinking. If you moved all the candy and sweets to the beginning of the shop where you entered, and then all the fruit and vegetables to close to where you live.
Have you been in a Lidl recently?
No, it's actually, there's no one close to me.
So when you enter, the first thing you see is a lot of fruit and veg.
Yeah, but when you leave the shop, that's
there's a lot
the
of
last
candy.
thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Maya, in your view, from the consumer's view, who are responsible for unhealthy eating habits?
Yeah, of course, consumers have a responsibility and a role in their own diets. We choose what we put in our own mouth. And when it comes to our kids, as parents, we have a huge responsibility to promote healthy diets to our kids. But that's not the only answer. When we look at across societies, not only in Denmark, but across the world, we see some similarities. We see that there are fewer people who doesn't get enough to eat, and that we are more people who get too much. and that malnutrition is also a thing because of the wrong food and poor diets. And when we see that this is going on many places, that must either be because consumers simultaneously across the world has lost their backbone, preventing them from making good decisions, or otherwise it means that there has been societal developments that make it more difficult to obtain healthy lifestyles. And I think it's number 2. And if it is societal developments, that also calls for societal solutions, not only individual responsibility.
So you also would like to go at a structural level, and
yes,
but still raise awareness amongst people, because the individual also has a responsibility.
Yeah, awareness is one thing, but it cannot stand alone, and market has a role to play. I agree with you, Klaus, and that can do some of the work, but there will also be a need for regulation to solve these problems at a structural level.
Sabina, you're about to head a Nordic project on energy consumption. Just briefly, what is the project about, and what do you hope to achieve with this project?
Yeah, this is a very important project. It's about addressing and understanding the high energy drink. Holland and Faroe Islands are partners of this project, and all have expressed their concern about this large energy drink consumption, and that we need to join together to do something about it. But as we all know, this is a really hard group to reach, to get them to change their behavior in a more healthy way. So this project will be about involving the adolescents themselves in reaching the best policy recommendations that work for them.
So we need to find out why young people drink it, or when they drink it, etc. All these things to be able to change.
This is the first part of the project, is understanding why and how, and then the next part is to involve them in what should we do.
And when do you plan to have your recommendations ready, or have your results?
Hopefully in 2 years. The project will start now in 2026. So I'm really excited.
And then Klaus, you heard, I know there's voices in the public debate, but also you heard it today, that there are wishes for legislation, wishes for variable taxes, health taxes, structural changes. How would initiatives like that be welcomed by supermarket chains and retailers?
To a certain extent, it will be welcomed with warmed arms. In Denmark, we have dietary advices. How many legumes, how much fruit and veg, how much water. So if you, for instance, made it a differentiated VAT that was linked to the dietary advices, and it was a law, because it is when it's VAT, then you will have something that was in common for all retailers. So you can legislate a lot that will make the healthier choices easier for the customers. In Lidl, we did a test in 1.5 years ago, where we paid the VAT on fruit and veg for 2 months, and we can see that the fruit and veg sale went up with almost 20% in total in Denmark. And in some regions where the income isn't as high as it is in Nordhavn here in Copenhagen, it went up with more than 30%. So you can actually make people buy more fruit and veg by differentiating the VAT. So if you took the VAT and differentiated in coherence with the dietary advices, I think you will have more people eating more healthy, because it will be cheaper for them to buy the good stuff in the dietary advices.
So even though this was your own little test, we actually already have some evidence that it works to remove the tax. You didn't try to then put extra tax on sweets?
No.
No, that must be the next test.
But I must say, if the legislation is if it comes, then it's for everybody. Then it's a framework that's for everybody, and then it's fine. I mean, as a retailer, we don't think that you should over-legislate us. We need freedom to be the stores that we are, but there are something you can do with legislation that would lead in the right direction. Absolutely.
Now we heard about today that Sebastian and some of the others talked for this shared Nordic collaboration. Would it matter for you? Would it make a difference if it was a shared Nordic effort, or should it just stick to the national level if it was up to you?
I think I'm representing Lidl in Denmark. So on behalf of Lidl in Denmark, I could say that I think we should focus on how we get the Danes to eat more healthy. But you could look at the European Union and think about what could be done in a lot of countries if you started thinking about what you want people to consume.
Maja, which concrete steps do TIC, which is the consumer organization's name, think are the most important to take to ensure better health for, first of all, the Danish population, but of course that can also be a lesson learned from all of the Nordic countries? What are the most important steps?
What we have focused on, which I think is important, is to look at the economic incentive, as Klaus mentioned, to differentiate the taxes. We will go very much into that in the upcoming period. Then we have the upcoming regulation on marketing of unhealthy food to children. It's really positive that the government has decided that we should have this regulation, but there's a very important role now for us to make sure that that would be sufficiently broad and effective to fulfill its goal. So that is important as well. And then I think we need to talk about those energy drinks. The numbers talk for itself. It's time for damage control, and at least let us protect our kids and make some age limits for when you can be sold, when children cannot be sold these products. But maybe we should also have a more broader discussion of whether the measures or specification is right for adding caffeine to products. Then I agree with the school food. It's not something that we are very into because it's a little long way from consumers, but we are cheering on the side because if you get a good school food program, it will also be easier for you as consumers to make healthy choices when you earn your own money.
Klaus, would you like a comment?
Yeah, it was just, I heard the gentleman from Finland mention Nutri-Score. And we think that guidance to the customers is a good thing. It's a good idea to have labeling that guides our customers to eat more healthy. There's the obvious things like fruit and veg. Everybody knows it's good, but there's also a lot of other foods on our shelves where a Nutri-Score would probably guide them in a more healthy direction. So in Lidl, we all favor for Nutri-Score. Also, when we talk about the discussion of ultra-processed food, Nutri-Score would be, as it is for now, the best way to talk about how to guide people to see what is ultra-processed, because that would often be in red.
Yes, because as Sebastian said, that Nutri-Score actually also gives warning, whereas the keyhole is only sort of a positive labeling. I would like to hear whether anyone from the audience would like to ask the panel a question. Well, you can just think about it. Well, oh, there's a question from the very bottom here from Judith Kust from the first panel discussion.
Oh, this is what? Yeah. We talked earlier about sharing best practice. And just a question to you, Klaus. How come that you're taking this step in Denmark? We're talking Nordic collaboration. I just asked my friend here from Finland. Lidl does not do the same in the other Nordic countries. What step can you take to look at more Nordic best practice sharing and sharing these across the board as retailers in the Nordic?
Yeah. In Lidl, thank you for the question, Judith. In Lidl, we are operating in 31 countries in Europe, and we have one CSR strategy that is that we have to be compliant. But within that strategy, we also have freedom within a framework. So we can do national initiatives that we think are good for us on a national scale. And for instance, the energy drink, but also the tobacco and nicotine, is something that we have done in Denmark. The tobacco and nicotine is also, if you travel around Europe, it's not often that you see tobacco and nicotine and food right next to each other. Often it's separated. It is implemented in a lot of other European countries. But we have a common set of rules, CSR strategy, and within that framework, we can do things on a national level that we think is the right thing to do, and that's how we do it. We also started the legume partnership here in Denmark because the dietary advices says you have to eat 100 grams of legume a day. The Danes eat, 5? So they're room for improvement. So that's a journey that we also are supporting.
And then we, of course, hope you can inspire your colleagues in Lidl and the other Nordic countries. But Sabine, personally, I know now as a toxicologist and a nutritionist, do you think that energy drinks actually should be banned altogether for children, adults, adolescents?
Small amounts of energy drinks, small amounts of caffeine are actually safe, even for children and adolescents. But the problem is that it's not all about energy drinks. We have other products as well. There are several products with attracting tastes for children with high caffeine levels, like chewing gums, energy pouches, nicotine-free snuffs, and dietary supplements, different dietary supplements.
I just have to excuse, there's a door that is really quaking down here, so if you behind your screens, we can maybe use this door, but just to say sorry.
And these products are available for children to buy. The one portion of these kind of products are high enough to disturb the sleep for children and also to cause other unwanted effects. So I think we need to come together to help them make healthy choices. If they are thirsty, the first choice should be water. If they are lacking energy, the first choice should be to have a healthy snack or meal, or see to get a good night's sleep.
So it's the more difficult solutions because all these sweets are really talking to us. But are there any questions from the audience? We have one from Sebastian Helm from Finland.
Thank you. Very interesting discussion. I have to get back to Klaus on your little intervention in playing with the VAT and paying for that. Is that something that you have shared with your other Lidl colleagues, and is this done in other countries as well? Because there is quite a large discussion, I think, in many countries, not only in Europe, but globally about taxes and how to go about making health-based food taxes. So if you have results from this, I think it would be really valuable if you could at least share it with your Nordic colleagues. And I know you can't give any financial details, but on a whole, would you say that, let's say, did you lose a lot of money by paying the VAT, or was it somehow compensated by people buying more fruits and veg?
The latter, yeah. But actually, Denmark is the only country in the European Union that only has one VAT. All other countries have differentiated VAT. Greece has 4 different VATs. In Germany, VAT on food is 7%. In Denmark, it's 25%. That's why we also drive south of the border to buy a lot of food down there at the moment. So a lot of European countries already has knowledge about this. I actually don't know how it is in Finland. Are there differentiated VAT? Yeah. So they already know that it works. And for instance, Germany also Sweden just lowered their VAT on food because of the inflation. So it's something that a lot of countries are very familiar with, but not in Denmark.
And I think Sebastian have one short comment.
Just a very short comment, just to make clear to everyone that obviously taxes are within national jurisdiction in all the EU member states as well. So we cannot have a European health tax. It really has to be enacted separately in all the European countries. And like you said, Klaus, we have different VAT schemes in all countries. But I think because a lot of countries would want to go forward on this, but we don't really have any good best practices. So as Nordic countries, we could go forward on this one, even though we have different VAT scales to begin with.
If we should be a little bit, or think extreme, because now these numbers in the NORMO are not so good, I came to think about when I was preparing that, like in Sweden, we have Systembolaget where you go to buy alcohol. Should we make places, I don't know, what do you think, Maya, where we actually say that unhealthy food like sweet drinks, etc., they can only be bought in Systembolaget along with alcohol. They have short opening hours, so in the supermarkets, and it should of course account for all, you can only buy more healthy food. Would that be a good way to go?
No, I don't think so. I think it's very important that also unhealthy food is a part of a healthy community or healthy diet, but the problem is balance. And we have a system where there's no balance, and we need to focus on that. And it's quite strange, actually, that in many ways we have a very well-regulated food system. If you want to market chia seeds in EU, there are specifications on how you can do it. If you want to make French fries and sell to European consumers, there's regulations on how brown they can be because of the risk for acrylamide, that is a risk factor for cancer. But so in many ways, we have so much very specific, well-regulated system to prevent us from being sick, to ensure established food safety, and at the same time, what makes us sick is to a large extent because of what we eat, and that's because of that we are not, we do not have appropriate measures regarding nutrition and diet. When it comes to that part of the regulation, it's wrapped in a narrative of free choice, which should not be touched upon. And I think we need to have that discussion on how we see this in a more holistic manner. I think caffeine is a very good example that you can drink caffeine. It's safe in a little amount, but we drink way much soda, which is unhealthy for us. So is it a good idea to put caffeine, addictive substance, in a large amount in the soda, not in the sofa? I think not. Just last week there was a public consultation in Denmark where we should comment on whether it's a good idea to allow that we add caffeine to alcohol, to hard alcohol, up to 50%. So that's a proposal on the table that probably is gonna go through. So I just think that it shows that even though we have so much focus on food safety, we have not enough measures to make food and diet safe. We need to talk about that.
Thank you so much. And we have just 1 minute left. So Sabine, do you have one good idea of now also with your project on how we get this right balance that Maya talks about?
I think we need to start from really early age to get children to have a healthy eating and healthy lifestyle, and it should be cheap. Everyone should afford to buy healthy food.
So we also back to healthy taxes in some way, or
yeah,
health taxes.
I think it's a good idea.
Klaus?
Closing, yeah. We can point a lot of fingers, but I think the most important fingers point to me, to ourselves, to you. I'm a father of 4. My job is to teach them how to deal with life. And one of the things that is super important in my house is to give them a good feeling of what is good food, what is healthy living. Do you exercise, eat fruit and veg, and don't drink energy drinks, don't smoke cigarettes. Did it work? No, not completely. But I think that we as parents have a huge role in this. I mean, we can lower the VAT, we can do a lot of things, we can do a lot of legislation, but it's back to the parents and our responsibility how we influence our kids.
Thank you so much for these nice comments and views, reflections for this panel debate. Please give our panel a hand. And actually, we are now about to close the launch of the NORMO 2025. It's been very compressed, but I actually think there's been very, very many interesting views shared here from the stage. And it's going to be really interesting to follow for the next years if we can take action, or we need to take action, how we will take action on these things. And I've tried to sum up a little bit. And of course, as was mentioned here, it's a very complex area, so we need to work on many levels. We need to work on individual level, we need to create awareness, we need to start in schools, maybe even kindergartens. And also, of course, we need to affect retailers, work partnership with them, and structural level we also need to affect. So variable taxes, health taxes is one idea that we have mentioned. Maybe new labeling, maybe the Nutri-Score. We should try to stand together as a Nordic region and try to affect the EU, because self-regulation is not enough. And then one of the things that we've also talked about is inequalities. And I think what Klaus just said here at the closing remark from him is really true. As a parent, we have a huge responsibility. The problem is that for part of the population, maybe the parents are not strong enough, not well informed, don't have the energy to take these discussions with their children, take these fights that we know that it takes also if you want to prevent them from sitting with their screens. So of course we need to also help or find a way to help this group. And as it was mentioned from the first panel debate, we need to remember not to run only for the high-risk group, but that small changes for all of us can make the biggest changes. And then this idea of the best practices, that was a difficult one, from the Nordic countries, that we actually need sometimes to be very concrete, because maybe we have a lot of tools. And just hearing what Klaus shared about that removing the tax from fruit and vegetables raised it by 20%, I think that's a good best practice to take away and to try to push politicians. And if we then, as in Norway, can make these surveys that can show that the public opinion is that I would like to eat less sweets than I do, but it's so cheap and it's just close to the cashier. Yeah, so if we could raise the tax on that and maybe lower it on healthy food, maybe that could be an idea. And then this marketing bank for children and young people that was also discussed, which they now have in Norway. A lot of ideas, a lot of actually quite concrete tools if we just have brave politicians. I would like to thank all of you for being here today, for all of you who followed us online. This session will be on YouTube afterwards, and for those of you who are in this room, there are these little flyers on your tables where you can find this QR code to scan. And for those of you who are online, you can find it afterwards. It will be online as a YouTube video, and in the comments you will find the link to the website, or else you can go to www.norden.org, and then you can find the NORMO 2025. And with these words, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. Have a really nice 2nd December.